Welcome to the CURES digital show and podcast, where we explore the cutting edge of wellness with some of the greatest minds out there. I'm Kara Sundlin. This episode is sponsored by the Center for Advanced Reproductive Services. So, do you ever wonder why some people go through really tough times and they become bitter, while others use challenges to become better? My next guest is a very successful Connecticut businessman. He has used what he calls the 4 Ps to triumph just about over everything. It's how he went from the orphanage to the highest level of the boardroom. Welcome, Ed Hajim. Thanks for being with us, Ed.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Yeah, you know, I know you've had quite the life, and it started out pretty grim, but tell me why you decided to write the book On the Road Less Traveled, An Unlikely Journey from the Orphanage toward the Boardroom.
Well, when I left the last orphanage, I decided to bury my life at 18 years old. And I really told nobody about it. Even my wife didn't know the whole story. But in my 70s, wife and children and the University of Rochester prevailed on me. Said, "You've got to put this in writing." So I started to write it. And after I got the first galleys done, I sent it out to 15 friends of mine. They all said, no, this has got to go to a wider audience. So I did real work on it and produced a book, and I'm getting enormous satisfaction out of it because it's proving to people that anything is possible. I've been a very lucky person, and I want to pass that on to young people to let them know that anything is possible. Education is the solution to most everything. And other lessons like never be a victim. And, you know, you said that in your introduction.
Yeah.
Some people do feel. One of the secrets is to whatever happens to you, focus on what's next, not what's past.
What's past, right. In fact, one of the comments about your book is that all kids should read this. And I know we don't always teach grit and resilience in school, but if nothing else, this is probably a gripping manual on grit and resilience. So it's probably good for all of the kids to read this.
Well, this is what most people have said. A good friend of mine said every freshman in college, every senior in high school ought to read it because it tells them a very simple story. Basically, in America, almost anything is possible. And it basically depends on how hard you want to work and the scope of your imagination. And I've been very lucky, but if you look at what I've done, and by the way, I failed early on in my business life, and I learned another lesson, is that basically early failure is a gift. You learn more from that. I learned more from that than anything else I've ever done. And that's in the book as well. Plus, it tells the story of a relationship between myself and my wife. You know, I always tell people I love her more than yesterday and less than tomorrow. And she's really been a very important part. So my 3rd P, which is partners, find someone to love.
Yeah, in fact, I know we've got a picture of you and your beautiful wife that I took from the book there. We'll put that up in a second. But I want to get people to go back and just understand. So here you were, a child. Your dad kidnapped you, then told you your mother was dead. You lived in a string of foster homes and orphanages, but yet you say your childhood actually helped you become who you are.
And I think that's one of the other messages, that disadvantages become advantages. Think about someone who's been in 18 or 20 different places, in hotel rooms, motel rooms, orphanages, foster homes. The YMCA on 34th Street in New York. What do you develop? You develop adaptability. You understand change. You actually start to seek change. So that helps you throughout your entire life. You're not afraid to take the next step. It also gives you resilience. Resilience is a muscle. Once you've gone through some difficult times, the next one is not as difficult. Gives you self-reliance, perseverance. It also gives you some negative stuff like anger, and you got to make sure that if you have negative stuff like anger, that you direct it toward making yourself a better person, not direct it externally to other people. That's one of the most important things. But that was it. My father kidnapped me, and he basically abandoned me 3 times in my first 18 years. But I loved him very much because he was all I had, and I was all he had. And as I got older, I understood him, the things he went through as a young man, and basically his difficulties and his job, which was to be a radio operator aboard a ship. So he was always out of town, always out of port. Nobody ever came to any of my graduations because he was always at sea. But he did send me messages. He basically said, Ed, you're a good person. You can do well, work hard. He had tenets. That and the Catholic Church told me that I could make it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about something that you've boiled it down into some principles that anyone can benefit from. And when you're trying to decide what to do, you say you want people to look at their passion. And how do you find it? You said you need to find what energizes you most, what would keep you awake at night, and maybe you
Right?
would not even care if money was involved.
That's right, Kara. I can tell you found your passion. No,
Yeah,
I want people to recognize that life is in four parts: self, family, work, and community. My word for giving back. And in each one of those areas, we've got to pour in the four P's. Find your passion as far as yourself is concerned. Find your passion for your work. Find your passion for your family. Also, find your passion in philanthropy as well, because giving back really is what it's all about. Then find your passion, in a sense, your principles. Find your principles for each one of these things. Find those those rules you want to follow throughout your life. Find those lines you won't cross. Now, if I'm going through partners, find the most important partner, but find other partners. When you put something together today, collaboration is absolutely necessary. Absolutely. Because there's so many technical difficulties. You need people to do things you can't do. And if you can find those kinds of people, I always also find people who do things you don't want to do. So if you can find the right partners, you end up doing the things you want to do, that you're passionate about, that you do well. And then finally, find your plans. I believe in writing. A young fellow said to me at a lecture I gave at a college recently, he said, "Tell me, too many ideas, Mr. Hashim. Give me one idea." And I said, "Here's one idea. Sit down right now and write where you want to go and how you think you might get there. Write a plan. And when you're doing it, look at life, look at your life, and see what's going to happen in your life. What are the trends? What are the waves? What are the cycles? What are the really, unsatisfied needs? And can you participate in that?" And once you get the plan down on paper, I know it's going to change, but if you have a plan, when that turn in the road comes, it won't be the end of the road. You can know where you want it to go, and you can change it. So those are my four P's, and I pitch it to people. You can have your own fifth P, which is purpose, I guess.
Yeah.
But develop things, a conversation with yourself, so you can go back and say, "This was my passion in high school: baseball, basketball, math, science, and girls." I got to college, and that changed. Math and science evolved into engineering. Sports, after my freshman year, evolved into extracurricular activities, where I found my passion. Actually, I didn't know it at the time, but in my junior year, I created a humor magazine, and I found my passion, which was to put people together to solve a problem, to create a product, or find a solution. And I got a terrific kick out of helping people do better than they thought they could. Yeah. And I didn't recognize until I was in my 40s that was really something which turned me on. But I looked back and I said, and then writing the book has helped me because I focused on it.
Well, and that's part of it. You've got your principles. You say don't settle or compromise and turn your vision into a reality. But when you talk about passion, you've had many. So what you're telling young people and everyone who's listening is passion sometimes change throughout your life, and that's okay.
Oh, it does. Yeah, exactly. I mean, and you have your passion for business. My biggest passion today is philanthropy. And even in the creation of a golf course in Nantucket, we created a golf course. It was a great experience. Then we had a passion for really helping the community. Now we're the largest charity on the island. And you got to be passionate about it, because these things you have to get people to follow you. And with your passion, they will follow you. But these are sort of the four things. And you may add your own thing, but I think these four things cover most of the territory. The key to the whole process, though, is to recognize that life is a balancing act, and you're always going to be out of balance. Recognize you have to balance, yourself with your work, with your family, and with giving back. And by the way, if you focus, automatically you get out of balance, and so you got to pay attention. So if you spend 6 months working very hard, make sure you take your wife to dinner and your kids on a vacation, and make sure you let them know that that's a problem. And I always kid about that. We created a vacation, which I recommend to everybody, which is a boat trip in the Caribbean. The key to that is, in the evening, no one can get away. They're stuck. They got to talk. They got to get it through. And we used to do that every other year, and it was really very good. Actually, had each one of the children and myself read a book and talk about a book. They're like Who Moved My Cheese, or The Secret, or If. Think of little books like that. But those are the kinds of things that you come up with over time. And that's why, at my advanced age now, I'm playing the 17th and 18th hole of the course. This is all I can give people, is having lived the perfect, the American dream.
Yeah.
When I was 28 years old, I had a minus net worth. I had to call my company that I got a job with and ask them me money so I get across country. So, it's been a great run. And I think that when you have a great run and you have a chance to give back, you have the near perfect life.
So you are the American dream, the embodiment of that. I mean, you came from an immigrant family. Your father faced anti-Semitism. There were all these things that happened to you as a kid that would have broken some people. And having come out of the pandemic, where many people are feeling broken, what do you think is a secret to turning these difficult things into advantages the way you did?
That's the famous two words. What's next? Continue to focus on the future. Look forward. The pandemic has been terrible, but it's been good in some respects. It makes people recognize that things are not always very simple. The last 40 years in America have been, except for 9/11, have been a very smooth ride. And when you don't have a smooth ride, you don't tend to cope. I mean, I think it's very important for people who live the good life, especially young people, to basically get out on their own. I always tell families they don't like it. Make your children uncomfortable. Send them to Knowles, National Outdoor Leadership School. Send them to Outward Bound. Put them on a raft in the Green River in Colorado. These kinds of things. This is what kids learn. My grandson spent 60 days in Alaska, on a trip, 30 days in the rain. I mean, think about the bonding he and the group got together with. So these are the kinds of things that really are very important early on, because if you get those experiences, those disadvantages become advantages. They really do. When you come across a problem in later life and you have really serious problems as a youngster, I've been there before. I can do that.
Yeah, I know it makes sense that you would have had experiences that make you more confident. You mentioned anger earlier. You certainly had every right to have a lot of anger at your father. You would later meet your mother as a grown adult. How did you deal with your anger, having the fact that he told you your mother was dead?
Well, I was very angry. In fact, I didn't smile much in college. I was very angry because you get the problem when you go through what I went through, basically a Me Too question. Why me? Why did I have to go through this? No, by the way, it's totally different today. I mean, today people let it hang out. When you were an orphan going to a private college, you weren't shunned. I was rejected by every fraternity my freshman year. I got into my sophomore year, but you were rejected. You're different. You're poor. You can't afford a car and so on. So it's not like it is today where, I'm dealing with a group in Boston where there's 75 kids, all from foster homes. They get together, they talk it over and so on. So it was a little difficult for me. And so I became very angry. I kept saying, why do I have to suffer? Why didn't I learn how to ride a bicycle or learn how to swim and so forth? Because when other kids had this thing. But then I found that by directing that anger toward anything I was doing, work, and so forth, and not taking it out on anybody else, it really helped me. It drove me. I got angry, but I took that energy and I put it forward rather than backward. That's very important, Kara. I think that's what I tell people. And there's no reason why you shouldn't be angry. And once you accept the fact that you have the right to be angry, it's fine. I have almost conquered it at 85 years old.
Well, right. You're a little on the other side of the journey. And, I'm curious. You mentioned one of your favorite books, On the Road Less Traveled, right?
Yeah.
So that was pivotal for you. You think that's your kids teased you for having too many self-help books.
I mean, you could spend all day talking about Scott Beck, but he says that basically love is giving to others.
Yeah.
Also, he talks about delaying gratification. I mean, I read his book a half a dozen times, and I said his is The Road Less Traveled. Mine is On the Road Less Traveled. It didn't leave my mind that he did sell 10 million copies, but I love his book and I reread it on a regular basis. I recommend people to do that, to find a book. There are a couple of books in my life that I continue to reread because in this area of principles, I find sentences that I put into my life that help me do certain kinds of things well. For example, in business, I developed the concept that if you don't take the credit, anything is possible. And even more than that, deflect credit. Just have some fun. When someone says, Kerry, you've done a great job, say, no, I did a good job, but Marie or Rosemary, she did a great job. She helped me. And see how that feels and see how that reacts and so forth. But I had a sign said, a person can do it, can accomplish almost anything if he or she doesn't worry about who gets the credit. Then I said, try and deflect credit. And I did that a couple of times in my life, and it was really very satisfying.
Yeah.
But these things are, when you read books and you pull things out of them, make them your own. On Wall Street, I use the word to live happy is to live hidden. Stay away from the CURES of the world. Don't go on television. Don't go in a newspaper. No, when you're in Wall Street is the job was to satisfy clients. I was a CEO. I had 800 people. I had to worry about them. If you start going into the public arena, that's a whole job. You know that. It's really a hard job. As soon as you start putting yourself out there, you got to prepare. Right now, of course, I'm chairman of a company, but I'm not really involved as much as I should be. And so I can spend the time on talking to people and so forth, and being in the. I'm still afraid of being in the public arena, to tell you the truth, because I lived all my life being hidden because it was fun, and I had a chance to run my company without having to worry about what the paper was going to say the next morning.
Yeah, well, you just talked about that you're doing it anyway, and that's part of what you said is you would choose sometimes to take a course that you were not qualified for in school, and you would get a D+ or do really badly, but you just always chose to challenge yourself. So I guess you're afraid to talk to me, but you're going ahead and doing it anyway.
I am afraid to talk to you, but you're right. But that's another lesson in the book. Reach. If you really think you want to be a physicist, take a physics course with the physicist. It didn't work. I wanted to be an international businessman, so I spent a summer in Belgium. Didn't work. I spent a summer in Central America. Didn't work. International business wasn't for me, but I gave it a try. So the words that people put on things, you got to be very careful. Find out what it means Monday morning. I always contrast the investment banker versus the investment analyst. Analysts, they're not important. Well, investment analyst runs around and visits companies and talks to people. And an investment banker for many years just carries someone's bag. And then eventually he or she does have a very interesting life. But, talk about what you do Monday morning in a job. And I think that's very important. One of my scholarship students at Harvard wrote me a letter saying, she said, you gave me 10 ideas about when I went to my first job. And that's really what's the responsibility? What physically do you do? When you make a decision, how many people does it impact and so forth? But I think reaching is very important. Reaching into, I want to be a physicist, take a physics course. You want to be an international business man, go out and do it.
Yeah.
Don't waste a summer.
Don't play it safe. Don't play it safe. So I just want to review for people if they're listening your 4 principles, and I know you encourage us to make our own, but it would be passion, and that would be obviously the difference between my should and my must. Your principles, which is your fundamental guide that makes your choices and action. You've chosen to make sure you're a giver. Partners, you credit your lovely wife for that, who knows you better than anybody, which is, that's a feat for you also, coming from what you came from, to have a successful family with a wife and children. And then plans, that's your personal GPS. So doing those 4 things. Do your kids listen to you? That's what I want to know. You've got kids. Are they listening to this?
My kids listen to me. My daughter has introduced me to at least 2 or 3 dozen of her friends. And my kids listen to me after a period of time. They have to make it their own.
Okay.
It's a very subtle conversation. You got to sort of feed it in very carefully, and then eventually they make it their own. They're right. Her friends call me up and say, can we talk to you? Can we come to your office? And I do that on a regular basis, and I love it. My kids, one of my sons and I have been in business together, so he sort of listens to me. I mean, we have a pretty good relationship, but it also depends upon the child. I go through this whole process of who people are. It's genes and experience mixed together, and there's some sort of the reaction between those two develops the personality. When you're the firstborn, you have a different personality than the middle guy than the second one. So the middle one listens to me. We've been in business together for 20 or 30 years. My daughter listens to me, but in many respects, you got to feed in anything you say to them very carefully. But they do provide all of their friends. Say, talk to Dad. Come and see you.
Yeah, they don't want to admit it.
But it's hard. It's very hard.
Right.
They don't listen. They read my book, though. I give them credit for that.
Well, one other question. It's a kind of a personal question. I haven't gotten through the whole book, so maybe it's in here. But you talk about the trauma you went through as a child. And there's a lot of information now about trauma. We're encouraging people to get help and to heal wounds. You talked about channeling anger. Did you get professional help for that with a therapist, or did you just figure it out?
People didn't have, in the 1940s, there weren't no professional help. The fact is, if I would have gone to college and asked for professional help, people would have looked down on me. Okay. Think about it.
Yeah.
In fact, so I became very self-reliant, which was a mistake. I didn't try. I pushed off mentors. Phil at the second orphanage was a fabulous person. He tried to mentor me. He wouldn't do it. I finally got help when my father died. I realized then I was old enough. I felt I had to do that. I was 36 years old, and I found a wonderful lady at the Ackerman Institute in New York, and we spent 6 months together. And she did something brilliantly. She said, "I want you to write letters to your father, ask him the questions you want answered, and then sit down and write the answers." We did that for 6 months. Now,
Wow.
I think today I'm involved with a group called Wiley in Boston, and they sign up foster children. If they're signed up with Wiley, they assign them a counselor, and the foster child has to talk to the counselor once a week. And I'm very excited about it. Woman has
Yeah.
gone from 5 students to 75 students, and she has people at MIT and Tufts and so forth, Boston College. And so today, help is in vogue, and it's necessary, and it's very helpful. You can get over lots of bumps by getting someone to talk to. Well, that's what parents were all about in the old days.
Yeah, no, I mean, it was very different for sure for your generation. My dad was a World War II guy, and we joke that he sort of probably had untreated PTSD forever, but he used it to do good things. So it's nice that it's different now. And I love that you said you actually did get help in your 30s, but hopefully if people read this book and we're raising teenagers, this is, again, On the Road Less Traveled, an unlikely journey from the orphanage to the boardroom. I love that your own children wrote it, but we don't have to wait till we're in our 30s. We can learn from your principles, right, Ed?
Thank you, Kara. Thank you so much. Yeah, it's been fun. Yeah, I think they can. They can glean from me. They can. I can learn. I've learned an enormous amount from people reading my book and sending me notes. Everybody references something in their life that's similar to my life, and that's been very satisfying. In fact, I could probably write a book on the responses to my book.
Hey, that could be your next book.
My next book,
EdHajim.com.
book's the 4 Ps. I've actually got the book printed and we're ready. I want to expand that. I want to expand it into something. It's an allegory. It's about a young man who goes to an island, meets an older man, and they go to the village of passions, the village of principles, village of partners, and the village of plans, and they talk throughout the entire time. A man who is in his 70s or 80s and a boy who's 18 years old. And I want to maybe create a video game where nobody gets shot.
I think that would be wonderful. And just have to make sure the kids will actually play it.
Fun with it. It's an allegory, and it's interesting because, this conversation that goes on between these two people, you start to recognize that maybe they're the same person.
Oh, I love it. All right, so we can get your book anywhere, and I love that you've shared your whole life story and that we can glean so much information. I think it's so important to get the wisdom from people like you who've lived a long time and an incredible life. So thank you for sharing your time with us.
Kara, thank you for inviting me, and it's been fun. Enjoyed meeting you. Take good care.
Thank
and may
you.
the force be with you.
Yes, thank you. You too, Ed. I've got more reading to do, more studying for sure. Thank you.
And when you get done, please give me a rating and a review in Amazon. You'll make my publisher happy.
I will do that. Absolutely, that does help. Thank you, Ed. And for everyone who's watching who wants to go back and learn some more wisdom on Kara's Cures, we have other episodes on WFSB Plus. You can go back and listen and join the conversation on social media. You can follow me at Kara Sundlin. You can also listen to this in your car or wherever you like to listen to your podcasts on the Kara's Cures podcast. Definitely leave us a rating and a review right there. It helps get this great content out to more people. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day and be well.